Thanks for coming out during Dead Week of all time. Yeah, sorry, as usual, I don't have anything written, so we'll make stuff up as we go. First, thank you for the political grounding earlier. One thing I want to add to it is that now in the UK, there are, I think, a handful of hunger strikers who are currently imprisoned in the UK for their work in Palestine Action, which is an organization in the UK that's been taking direct action against weapons manufacturers like Elbit Systems. And now they're being prosecuted on souped-up terrorism charges. They're being held without fair trial. Their due process rights are being violated, and they're on hunger strike to demand the end of UK sales of weapons to Israel and also due process rights for the prisoners. So I just want to acknowledge that those people are on hunger strike, and we should keep them in mind and support them in the same way that many of you supported me throughout the hunger strike here on campus. And as you said earlier, like, the genocide hadn't stopped, and that's why I'm glad to see so many people out here. As you mentioned earlier, like, over 380 Palestinians have been killed. Like, that's not a ceasefire. Ceasefire means you cease fire. It doesn't mean you kill 380 Palestinians. It doesn't mean you draw imaginary lines in Gaza and then kill people who step over the line. I mean, I think it was this week or last week, the Israeli military tweets out that they eliminated a terrorist, and if you look at who it was a 3-year-old child. Like, who does this? And why are we okay with this happening? So that's something I think also is important to keep in mind. So I appreciate the grounding from earlier. I guess I know you're all here to hear about, how I got suspended, so I guess we can talk about that. There was a letter that was published by the Vice Chancellor, Benjamin Hermelin, a new friend. So the thing that stuck out to me in this big letter that he writes, a lot of interesting allegations in there, a lot of redacted names that made the allegations. But one thing that sticks out to me is that he writes that the things that I was doing was creating a hostile environment on campus. Those are the words that he chose, hostile environment. And I guess this raises a question for me that, well, if what I'm doing creates a hostile environment, like, what about what you're doing? Like, what about the fact that CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, designated UC Berkeley as a hostile campus for Middle Eastern, Palestinian, and Muslim students because of the way that this campus ignores their concerns and ignores the Islamophobia that they face? Like, does that not create a hostile environment? Or what about the fact that Palestine Legal, with support of UC Berkeley law students, wrote a 20-plus page report talking about that fact that UC Berkeley has been ignoring the cries for help from Palestinian, Muslim, and Middle Eastern students who are walking around campus being called rapists and terrorists and Hamas, and reporting this to our Office of Prevention of Discrimination, and nothing happens? Or what about the Palestinian students who are being targeted in class by their professors and being called out for being Palestinian or looking visibly Palestinian or Muslim? Or what about the grad student who was hit with the exact same policy that I was hit with, the same violation, for mentioning in an anthropology class or something that Palestine is an example of settler colonialism, which is simply a fact? Like, do these not also create a hostile environment on campus? And when they say that what I do creates a hostile environment on campus for saying that killing children is bad and starving children is bad, well, what about this university funding and supporting the starvation and slaughtering of children? What about the people on this campus who have lost family members to the genocide, and the university continues to invest money in the weapons manufacturers, and our department in engineering continues to work with companies like Amazon and Google and Microsoft that have these billion-dollar contracts? To me, it's like, how are these not the things that create the hostile environment for students on campus? Why is it that someone's saying that starvation is bad? Why is that the hostile environment? And I guess the other thing I would point out is that, I think I was on my best behavior, to put it very bluntly, because the university clearly doesn't like the fact that we want to talk about Palestine in the classroom, or doesn't think that we should talk about Palestine in the classroom. Okay, no problem, I'll be well behaved. I'll do everything outside of the classroom. If anyone was in the classes that I taught, you'll know that I didn't talk about this in class. I had TAs asking me about it, and I told them, please don't talk about it in class, we'll talk about it afterwards. I had students asking me, and I said the same thing. So I was on my very best behavior because I knew that the university was going to keep a close eye on this, and they still weren't happy about it. And I think what this really shows is, it's not how we talk about Palestine that the university isn't happy with. It's the fact that we're talking about it at all. They don't want us to say anything about it. And it doesn't matter how we talk about it. We can be on our very best behavior, talk about it outside the classroom, here on Sproul, and they're still going to find some issue with whatever I'm doing today. So that strikes me again as something that's creating a hostile environment to say, you can't talk about this. You have people who are losing family members to this genocide. We have people who, are being harassed on campus for looking Palestinian or for wearing a keffiyeh. And when the university says, you can't even talk about this, and when you talk about it, it's political indoctrination, not only is that creating a hostile environment, frankly, I think it's also an insult to all of you. It's basically saying we can't think critically, that all of you are too stupid to listen to a conversation about Palestine and make your own judgments. And what I find very funny is that in one of the things that they quoted me for, some of those allegations from 18 months ago, no less. And when they asked me about it, I had no idea what I'd said 18 months ago, because it was 18 months ago. But one of the things they quoted, and I found it very funny, that they quoted verbatim something like me saying, it's okay if you don't agree with what I'm saying. I just think it's important to have conversations like this. That's what I said to students after class was over, after they were free to go, during a totally optional lecture. And they were like, okay, this is political indoctrination. So it makes me wonder, are students really that stupid that you can't think critically? And when someone tells you, okay, this is my opinion on Palestine, it's based on these facts, and let's have a conversation about it, and it's okay if you disagree. Is that not what college is for? Isn't college for coming here and talking and having these conversations? I guess not. If it's about Palestine, I guess that's where your free speech rights end. So it's okay if we criticize the university, it's okay if we criticize Donald Trump, but it's not okay if we criticize Palestine. And I think that's something that I'm glad we're all here, because I hope we can change that on campus, even if I'm not around for the next 6 months. And I guess one more thing I would bring up when people ask me, my reaction to this, was I surprised or whatever? I don't think it's a coincidence that in September, my name gets reported to the Trump administration. And then in December, I get this notice that I don't have a job anymore for 6 months. I think if you take this fact and this other fact in the context of what's going on in higher ed across this country, the way that the Trump administration has been forcing Columbia, UCLA, Brown, et cetera, to fold and give in to their demands, and the Trump administration's demands often being cracking down on pro-Palestinian voices, I don't think it's a coincidence that this Benjamin Hermelin guy, I don't know what he does every day, but I don't think it's a coincidence that in September, he surely knows that I'm one of those names that's submitted to the Trump administration. And then in December, I get a signed letter from this guy saying, oh, you don't have a job anymore for 6 months. I don't know for sure what happened. I think we should do investigations to find out, especially since this is a public university. But I think this raises very serious questions. What is this guy doing? Is he talking with the Trump administration and saying, well, we want a better deal from you, so we're going to kick this guy under the bus? I don't know, but I think it raises very serious questions, and for a campus of people who I hope can think critically, I hope we can think about these two events and think about whether or not they're connected, because I think that it's very suspicious that one of these things happens in September, and then in December I get this letter from this Hermelin guy about not having a job. So yeah, these are all pretty kind of scattered thoughts. I apologize for that. But I think ultimately what it really comes down to is that we're sort of at a crossroads, especially with this so-called ceasefire happening. I think we are very much at a crossroads in the 77 years plus of the history of Palestine and the Palestinian people. And I think that the next chapter of this history is just starting to be written. And so that's why I think it's more important than ever now, even after there is this so-called ceasefire, to do everything we can to stand up for human rights, to stand up for equality, to stand up for democracy and dignity for the Palestinian people and liberation for the Palestinian people, because we're at such an important moment in this history. And you, especially as students, I guess is the closing thought I'll leave you with, is that the student movement is where power in this country comes from. And people often ask me, as faculty, oh, you have the power to indoctrinate students or whatever, but really you as students are the people who have the power here. If you think about the movement against divestment in South Africa, or you look at the movement against the Iraq War in the 2000s, and now you look at the encampments that happened in 2024, it's always the students that are leading change in this country and on this campus. And so, don't undersell yourselves. You are in a very powerful position here at this very prestigious university, and you can leverage this university and its name to help write this next chapter of Palestinian history. So while I may not be here for the next 6 months, I entrust you with this great responsibility and this great power, and I hope we can continue working together until we see a free Palestine. Thanks.
Free Palestine!